Oh, DK, it is so nice to have you here today. I mean, it's always fun, fun. And just making sure we're recording here. Okay, good. So DK, amazing to have you. And
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, okay, so whoa, trip out. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, DK, I've known for a while. He's been coming around to my community, sharing his astrology magic and all of that stuff for a couple of years, right? It's been years. Yeah, and so we've gotten to know each other pretty well. We're like brother and sister and all that stuff. Spiritual bro, spiritual sis.
Yeah, I mean, that's real too. That's real.
Yeah. It is real. So here's the deal. I have him come to the Inner Sanctum, which is my member site where, people come year round. They're just in my member site, and we do a bunch of cool stuff there. And every so often I have DK come and talk to my peeps. So I was texting him saying, hey, DK, want to come again? It's, the beginning of 2020, and we'd love to hear the astrology surf report. And I asked him, okay, what are the themes? Just let me know, what are the themes? Just so I'm curious, what are the themes for this year? So I have the text out. I'm going to read it exactly verbatim for what he said. He said, okay, some themes this year. Number 1, rapid destruction of the system / status quo. The next one, old forms, as in family, corporate, government, religious, are crumbling. The next one, we are building alternative new society through enlightened community and intention. The next one was the need to withdraw energy from old security and fear-based agreements and commit to living your best life. The next one is jobs, relationships, etc. that promise security but are out of alignment with your highest good will quickly reveal themselves to be toxic. And the next one, going forward, the only security is in aligning with our highest selves and purpose and connecting to like-minded community. And next, the 20-year great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius at the end of the year is the start of the next world age. And the next one is, thus will be a year of testing, 6 eclipses in 2020, but also a year with tremendous power for those who are focused and committed to the path of their highest good. Okay, and we are recording this now in April 2020. So DK, I'm just going to have to say, nailed it.
Yeah.
We are sitting in the middle of quarantine, seeing almost every bullet of this point happening. What are your thoughts? Because when I reflected back to you and I reminded you of what you said, I think you were shocked.
I was. I hadn't looked at it since since I sent it to you. And
I had a feeling. I was like, DK, check this shit out.
And I was just like, whoa. First of all, I said that. And second of all, wow, man. I mean, so astrologically, right, the old society has to break down. We're just in this time, these big cycles of time. And can I just do a refresher? I mean, I get tired of hearing myself saying this, but I forget that a lot of people don't know any of this astrological stuff. So last time Pluto was in Capricorn was the 1770s. So the American Revolution. Previous time was the early 1500s, like the first 15 years of the 1500s, Martin Luther, Protestant Reformation. So those are just 2 events from those previous cycles.
Wow.
But both of those events were and there's a consistent theme here. It's like society's become really oppressive, so in the colonies, it was the taxes and being under the rulership of Mad King George. In the 1500s, the Catholic Church had kind of a stranglehold on everything, right? And you weren't allowed to read the Bible for yourself. You weren't allowed to pray to God for yourself. You weren't allowed to have, a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I mean, that would have been unthinkable heresy back then, right?
Yeah.
But so that you had these like oppressive conditions, and then this inspiration or this idea that comes through and kind of catches fire. And if you think about either of those, Martin Luther was like putting himself at a huge risk by nailing that to the church, his theses to the church door. The colonists, the founding fathers or whatever you want to call them, the penalties, if the colonists had lost a war, for independence here in the US, were like really, really horrible, not just for them, but for their families. I mean, public torture, humiliation, everybody in their family would be tortured and killed, kids, wives. But they believed in these ideas, and these ideas just started spreading like wildfire. And then within a short period of time, we're living in a whole new world. So I always kind of point out, like, I mean, the obvious, right? That the founders of this country really didn't have people of color, in mind as far as the freedom that everyone deserves. They didn't have women in mind, right? And for the time when that happened, those ideas were still so revolutionary, and they led eventually to the spread of democracy around most of the world, and a lot of freedom for most people, or a lot of the world's population. So the same thing is happening now at the next level of the spiral. So it had to happen, but it's kind of shocking how fast it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you read about it in books, and I'm sure as an astrologer, you're like, wait for it. It's got to be coming soon. But it's got, I just wonder what that's like, knowing that it's on some level coming, and watching it finally start coming down. What are your thoughts about the way in which it's, the revolution is beginning, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, well, I mean, it needs to become a revolution, right?
Yes.
And so first thought is, this is just the beginning. Mm-hmm. This is going to happen again and again until what needs to happen in society happens. Mm-hmm. It not necessarily, coronavirus. It could be I mean, this is a surprise, right? I don't think we've all known this was possible. And then there's really, there's something fishy about the whole thing to me. And I think to a lot of people, because on one level, it's just an exercise in massive population mind control. Like the amount of media mentions of coronavirus, like within the first 2 weeks in the US, they doubled from 1 billion to 2 billion, which 1 billion was already the combined media mentions of all of the other modern pandemics combined.
Right.
SARS, MERS, HIV, H1N1. So, I mean, there's been this huge, I think, and this is probably going to continue to be the case. It's like there's going to be, Saturn, Pluto conjunctions, which we've been under for the last 9 months or so. And then Saturn's going to come back in the second half of 2020 and be conjunct Pluto again. Those are like typically cycles of contraction and repression, where governments and whoever has the power, the military, whatever, are like really cracking down on people. So I feel like on one level, you've got like the bad people are going to try to do bad things, and they're going to try to use this to do bad things. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, it's up to us, the good people, to try to do good things with it. And it's been remarkably mild to have this level of effect on the world's population. And this, I mean, the amount of people who have died from this is incredibly small, considering the forecast we were getting in the beginning. And most people, I mean, like 98% of people recover completely, and most people don't even get that sick. So it's sort of like there's this weird mixture of grace and.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, the whole situation is unfortunate on many levels, because of the terror that people are in, and the fear. When we have some kind of martial law going on, it's not easy. And it really is provocative as it is. And then we are watching the news, and there are a lot of deaths. I mean, there of course are a lot of deaths with the regular flu and all of that. But yeah, with the projections, at least we're seeing, at least today, a lessening of those projections, which is great. But yeah, I think the whole thing there's the, of course, you can look at it from the framework of all this mind control kind of thing, but that's really nothing new. We've always, we have always kind of been under the influence of whatever it is that we ingest. And people in general have not been vigilant about being aware of the kind of information they're ingesting or how frequently they're ingesting. And I think that we are so much more porous than most of us understand. And
Yeah.
so, so I like that you're bringing that up on the one hand, but yeah, I feel like there's this counter movement, not just the dark stuff, but this counter movement of people getting activated in a different way. I don't know if we're at the revolution stage, but in my communities, people are getting activated and wanting to step into leadership and wanting to lead a movement of support, of love, of collaboration, of cooperation, and that could be the beginning stage of the revolution. As we see it, or just shifting the economies and the whole. Now I'm just thinking about Bernie and wow, the whole democratic socialism thing. Now it's making sense to everybody, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. Well, not everybody, but yeah.
But
Yeah.
most people are probably going to cash their checks if they get it, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's a really, in a sense, like the people, well, there's a lot here, but this is a culling of the herd to some extent. And
that's so harsh. That's so harsh, DK.
It's harsh, but it's what nature does, right?
I know, yeah.
We're part of, and that's part of the huge, I feel like the huge problem with modern society is that we see ourselves as separate from nature,
mm-hmm.
right? And that's what's led to the pollution. That's what's led to the abuse of animals that, supposedly that's where the coronavirus and these novel viruses are coming from. Is humans interacting with animals in ways that really shouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's an
yeah, right.
Point.
There's like some World Health Organization epidemiologist said, we've been expanding so fast and we keep going into these frontier areas to build more houses and more cities and more factories, et cetera, where people and these animals have historically never interacted. So some of the bats in these areas, for example, that, are only in whatever
mm-hmm.
that area of China or of the South America or whatever. And he said, normally, like in the past, that migration of humans would have been slow and it would have had relatively low impact. And then, there's this kind of thing, this balance that gets worked out, but we've just been, more, bigger, more, sell more, buy more, make more, to the extent that, it's introducing these really crisis level diseases.
Yeah. Wow.
I feel like, this separation of like, we're not part of nature, we are part of nature. And it's interesting to me that with, this coronavirus, most of the pandemic viruses target children, so malaria, measles, things like that. Historically, children are the ones influenza are the ones who suffer the most and who die at the highest rate. This one is like targeting people that are really unhealthy. And I'm not saying that that's their fault that they're unhealthy. If you grow up in an unhealthy society without a lot of luck and a lot of grace, you're going to end up, by the time you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you're going to be really unhealthy. And the whole system's set up to funnel people into that state of constant disease, right? At least in the US. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I feel like one of the things, the opportunities here is that we, there's this kind of massive awakening of, we're not separate from the earth. We're part of the earth, and we're not warring against the animals and nature. We're supposed to be, even going back to the King James Bible, right? We're supposed to be taking care of them.
Right. Stewarding, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And, it's interesting you're saying that. And I hope it's happening, right? But I also think that people who need to remember that they are part of the earth, it may fall on deaf ears, right? But I do see many, many people coming forward with that kind of level of information. And actually, I just recently did a big channeling and ritual for people. And I'm telling you, usually I'm working with angels. This time, it was all earth spirits. Animals were coming forward. Condor came forward. A lot of themes of like the the dark goddess, and it was like so cool. And I was like, I don't know how to break the news to my angel peeps, but it's really the earth who's speaking now.
Yeah.
But the support also that's coming from the earth, the love and the holding of us was also, it didn't feel like, oh, here's a great punishment. It's like, hey, this is balance, and this is how to come back into balance, and to remember what you're saying. You are part of earth. We're connected with earth. And it was, you don't just have a heavenly father, you also have an earthly, like a mother here, a spiritual mother here. And so that is the work that I'm working on now, is really looking at how these two polarities are my vision is that they become married, that they merge better in our own heart, mind, and bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's how we do it, right? And I feel like there are historical examples of the I got the other day, like somebody sent me this thing of like, and it was a YouTube video, and no comment. It's just somebody texted me after the pandemic, the new dark ages. I'm like, I'm not watching that, man. There's enough fear out there already. I think there's just a part of us, or it's the parasitic infestation, where it's like, ooh, the dark ages, that's exciting. Like, I can tell my kids, well, I can't tell my kids because they'll all be dead. But, there are historical examples fairly recently from Eastern Europe, at least, of really peaceful revolutions happening. Granted, at the end of a lot of suffering, but there's the Estonia where all the people came together and sang, like, millions of people came to the state capitol, and for like decades they'd been forced to sing Soviet, praises of the Soviet Union songs, and then somebody started singing the band national song, and they all started singing it, and within like a few months the Soviets were withdrawing.
They can't handle the song.
Yeah. And then to be fair, that was while Gorbachev was in charge. So it was Glasnost, and he had kind of come out and said, we're going to let people have more freedom. And so he really couldn't back down. Mm-hmm. Then there's the Velvet Revolution, in Czechoslovakia, and all of the, I think the commonality there. So the Velvet Revolution was artists, playwrights, composers, and then the general people started joining in and making art. And you and I have talked about this a lot, on our various calls and things. But I feel like one of the things that I'm seeing with the quarantine lockdown is people talking about doing things like making art, and baking bread apparently is a huge thing,
the bread baking revolution.
Yeah. But I mean, that's really how we change it, right? If enough individuals develop this consciousness of, hey, we don't have to live in this, soul killing grind. There's a better way of doing this. Let's make art. Let's connect. We don't need to buy all the extra gadgets or whatever, And I mean, I think that's just a real tip of the iceberg as far as the change that wants to happen. Because I think I see us as a species evolving beyond the idea that we can own the earth, own parts of the earth. But I don't think this is going to happen in 3 years, probably.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I'm holding a vision for that as well. And so is my 8-year-old daughter, she just goes on rampages about the fact that you have to buy, she doesn't understand it. So you have to buy land. Like, how do you have to buy it, and then she's really convinced money needs to be eradicated. And
my 9-year-old son, he's all about that.
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness, because I think they're the ones that are going to, maybe they will make the changes, and we're just laying the foundation for that. Because right now it's challenging to see a world where that can happen. However, when you see the United States government that just weeks ago was really opposed to anything socialism, right? Or a certain part of the government being really opposed to socialism. And then in just a few weeks later, they're giving everybody checks, right? And so it's all possible. It's all in there somewhere. I think we just need the right stimulus, excuse the pun, for everyone to dig deep. And I was actually pretty impressed at the bipartisanship, at least in the United States, which has not happened. They actually worked together and got something done in what was that, a week? I mean, or like, that's crazy.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and I feel like what this episode is, it's sort of like, it is one of those tests that I kind of semi-consciously predicted, which, that's just spirits. I mean, honestly, I have to give all the credit to, Great Spirit, because I just opened the channel. I've done my work to, learn the language, right, and study the language of astrology. But, that prediction, I feel like there are going to be more tests, and it's remarkable how what you're describing, and just the way, just talking to people, right? How people's consciousness is really changing, and they're like, yeah, I'm really unhappy about, this, or I'm really afraid. And I'm also, helping these people that I know need help, right? Or, I mean, there's so much helping going on during this as well. And I really feel like maybe it only takes, let's hope 2 or 3 episodes of this sort over the next 3 years. And everybody not everybody, but enough people can get on the same wavelength of, hey, let's just make this better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like free energy is a big one. Free energy's been around for almost 100 years now. And it's just been, the U.S. Government, like the dark government or whatever, has confiscated like 5,000 plus patents over the last 60 years on free energy devices. And some of the inventors of that disappeared when they wouldn't be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
What if we just stopped spending trillions of dollars on guns and killing people and poisoning people and trying to enslave people in other countries? Like, we wouldn't have to worry about this kind of thing. We could social distance and comfort and wealth,
Right. Well, you make it sound so easy. It's so straightforward, DK. I mean, and it's amazing that we do half of the things we're doing. It's incredible. And secretly I have been watching politics, watching, and looking at certain presidents and going, you know what, that generation just needs to go away. Like, stop it, just stop it. But I hope, my vision is like these 8-year-olds, maybe.
Are for culling the herd.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of secretly, but not the whole herd, just certain parts of the herd.
Let's go on the record and say that there are some really great baby boomers.
Yeah.
We know some.
Know some good baby boomers. Huh?
Right. Yeah.
Pretty kick-ass Gen Xers for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. So you're just saying, like, you're looking at the politicians and some of these people, and
yeah. I mean, I just feel like there's a great opportunity for all of us, just our politics and us personally, and in how we choose to believe, and how much. I mean, it's really an opportunity to break down at least some of this polarity, in a way. Because I feel like something like a virus is just a great equalizer. No one's better than the other person. It's just going to come, and it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe in. It's just going to come. Just like any virus, they're neutral. They just do their thing. And so, so I feel like with that, like our consciousness has an opportunity to rise beyond polarity, beyond Democrat, beyond Republican, into like being human. Right? Yeah. Here we're human, and we all have needs, and how do we all get our needs met, our basic needs met?
Yeah.
Which not all of us have our basic needs met. I'm not talking about just right now, but the poverty and just there's still starving children in the world.
There's still starving children.
And there's plenty of food to feed them all.
Yeah.
Like tenfold.
Yeah.
So that kind of shit, I'm hoping people take a look at.
Well, and that's why, again, at least so far, knock on wood, as far as a wake-up call, you really, in some ways, couldn't get much better than this, I mean, because I think it's also waking people up internally to, like, do I want to live in fear? Do I want to follow, and like you said earlier, with the mass media, I mean, going back to the Bible again, Jesus said it's not what comes into a person that makes the person sick. It's what comes out of a person. right, that makes them sick. And at the same time, if you're ingesting this programming all of the time, it's impossible for what comes out of us to be healthy, right? Because the programming, they've been refining it. You know, the companies who sponsor all of the news programs, right, have been refining this since World War II. And it's hypnosis. TV is inherently a hypnotic medium because of the flicker rate, which synchronizes, you know, more or less to the resting pulse. So, you know, I think we have to wake up and realize, like, I have a choice, but that choice means, you know, if what the experts say is true, and there's going to be more and more of these global pandemics that are, you know, that people aren't immune to, I need to strengthen my immune system. I can't depend on like getting the right medicine, you know, when I need it. And ultimately, how do we strengthen that immune system? By living so that our hearts are open and expansive, and we're experiencing joy, and there's meaning in what we do, you know. And
yeah, and you're right, because it takes on a whole different meaning. I mean, you and I specifically have talked about for years now in front of communities about how important it is to be happy, and how important it is for you to align your life to your joy, right? And it didn't even cross our minds that we were talking about boosting immune systems against future, you know, because back then it's just like, well, that's just the mandate. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're hearing from spirit. And it's just like aligning your life at any cost, essentially, towards joy. No matter what you got to let go of, you best start doing it. And I think that now it's like, wow, what an incredible new mandate or invitation for us all to really follow our hearts and to do everything we can to not be in this toxic, stressed out version of ourselves, which I definitely was guilty of last year for sure. After I launched my book, or during that whole thing, it was very stressful for me last year. And I've been having some soul searching with myself about, we're just never going to go back to that. And it's, you know, and we just can't. So I like how you're bringing up, you know, this is one pandemic. There could be others, you know, in the future. What are we going to do about it? Which takes me to a question for you that we talked about before getting on, which was, you know, all this is happening. How do we evolve past it? How do we respond? What's being called of us as individuals now? What's your perspective on that?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew the answer to that. I mean, intuitively, the way I've sensed it for years, and it seems to be in a lot sharper focus, is that on some level we are creating, you know, I mean, so science now says reality is a mass hallucination, right? I mean, that's pretty documented neuroscience where, you know, it's hard to dispute. So we're all having this collective dream, and right, we both have this, you know, shamanic background as far as studying shamanic traditions, and they say the same thing. So I feel like the simplest answer, which, you know, the problem with this is like, well, how does that translate into the real world changing? But is we, each of us, change our focus and our awareness, and cultivate the awareness that when I find, the more that I find love, peace, joy, beauty within my own heart, and create that within my own little sphere, and then connect to other spheres that are creating that, you know, somehow that changes everything. I mean, eventually. And I feel like that's the beauty of that, like the Singing Revolution, which is the movie about Estonia, and then, you know, the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, is it was just like these artists in Estonia, just regular people just deciding, hey, we love singing our song together. And they had done this for like since way back in the day, you know, and we need to sing our song. And eventually that need to sing the song with each other overrode the fear of the gulag, or, you know, being crushed by tanks or whatever. The need to feel that joy was so intense. And I feel like this is what, you know, disasters and catastrophes do, is they bring us face to face with, what do I really want out of life? And am I living in a way that's going to give that to me, you know, or make it possible for me to have that? You know, so I just feel like that. I don't know if that's even a clear answer. It's like,
no, I mean, I think you're pointing to, like, you know, at least you're pointing to like a collective urge that it will kind of rise up. And I think our our task is to track our joy, which we're not used to doing, because many of us are have fallen so far out of joy because of responsibility and really living out of alignment, period, living with the wrong people. I mean, there's a lot of people in relationships that are in there still from duty and not in love. Their heart's not connected, which I just think is such a travesty. You know, we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah. I'm
But
so glad to not be quarantined with some
exactly,
relationship partners, you know.
exactly right. So, but
Yeah.
it's to learn how to track our joy and really come into the notion that joy is valuable. It's valuable. I think we have worshiped the God of the dollar, the God of our careers, and really usurped our. We have not put enough love into the God of joy and
And pleasure.
and pleasure. And I feel like there's an opportunity or a change of guards that before what we worshiped was more disciplined and structure and straightforward, and now there's like a softer changing of the guards where it's about joy, creativity, or it can be about joy, creativity,
Yeah. Yeah.
not religion, but a spiritual, like a true joyous communion with with
Yes.
with with spirit, with nature, like a coming back to an authentic way to live that's sweet, that's just sweet and simple, and
Yeah.
that where we can just not try and it's less hierarchical, if you will. It just feels
Yeah.
like just more leveled out.
Yeah. And I mean, we need community. And maybe part of the lesson in this whole thing is like teaching people that, you know, oh, well, if I, you know, because some people are really having a hard time with not being around other people, right? And so there's everybody's doing these Zoom happy hours or whatever. And maybe that's a way that people can start to like let their armor down. That's less intense if you're close to somebody physically. I don't know. I mean, I'm intrigued by all the possibilities of this. But I mean, I really feel like what needs to happen and what is happening and trying to happen is that we are able to relate with one another in a way where we're not instantly putting up defenses or trying to get one up or seeing that person as above us, so we have to take them down, you know, as competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it makes me think that the whole world at one time should do MDMA. And I feel like that would solve everything. So just an intense, straight to the heart. I don't want to take one thing from anybody. I never want to harm anyone. I love myself. I love you. I mean, what if everybody did it at once, including our governments?
Man, do you know Allen Ginsberg and Timothy Leary hatched this plot to like get, you know, like put it acid into the, I don't know, in the water in the White House or the Capitol building.
Yeah,
They're trying to dose all these politicians, and it
I
was a good idea.
know.
It was a
I
good idea.
a friend of mine was telling me that there's a government, no, there's an organization. It's like a company in Silicon Valley that secretly is requiring their executives to go on some kind of medicine journey, whether it's like ayahuasca or whatever. They're requiring them to do heart medicine before they can step into power. And I feel like that's what it's for. You know, bring it
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, and that's like, hey, maybe this will happen. I think we should hold the vision.
Yeah.
Free MDMA for all citizens of the world. But you have to show up to the group meditation around this date and time, right? But you know, that's what is the MDMA, right? I mean, yeah, so it's entheogenic, it's taking you on a journey of spirit, but it's also taking you on a journey of spirit where your body feels good, right? Where your emotions feel good. And I feel like just that sense of feeling good. David Hawkins, the Power versus Force author, in his last book, which is called Letting Go, he said something along the lines of all totalitarian systems, whether they're religious, capitalist, you know, royalty, they have all maintained power based on taking away pleasure from the masses. So restricting the masses' ability to enjoy healthy pleasure. you know, whether it's like sexual taboo, you know, like
Oh,
Puritan.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Just
then,
guilt, really guilt and shame about
yeah,
any kind of pleasure that you want, whether it's um, too much sugar or too much sex or whatever. You know, we're really hard on ourselves about our desires,
yeah,
you know.
we need to get that back.
We need to get our mojo back.
Yeah.
One of my number one pet peeves, when you really look at how our institutions are designed, it's looking at, you know, when did they take away recess? You know,
Yeah.
like recess was a good idea, and then why did it stop? Like literally, why did it stop? And it's because they're trying to still create factory workers from the 1950s, and this is not the 1950s. You know, we're still in the same even educational model. So I'm holding hope that even that changes out of this, you know, where it's less sit down, little Billy and little Sue. And, you know, how helpful is that?
Yeah, I mean, my daughter, my oldest child, she's super academic. She loves using her brain, and she's like really verbal and was super precocious. And so school, like, you know, there's some downsides, but she pretty much likes it. My son, he should not be in school. I mean, he needs to be
Yeah.
in a school where you're like using your hands and you're like touching a tree, you know, because it just doesn't work for him.
Yeah.
And you know, so many kids, I mean, it's just like I think a school is prison for kids.
Well, it can be depending on the kid, and you know, only a small percentage really excel in that kind of environment. So I'm really holding hope. I just do. I feel even though the outlook is kind of grim right now, people are really in it right now, or maybe even this
Yeah.
year we're going to be recovering even financially for a long time already. It's only been a few weeks so far, um, but in the end, with any cataclysm that I've had in my life or just in general, there's this beautiful process of rebuilding. So I feel one of the ways that we recover through this is by holding the vision. Each person has to
Yeah.
hold the vision for this new world, whatever it is, whatever you're like, you know, for me, educational system, I'm holding a vision for that it could be more creative, or that kids have more of a fluidity or more options inside of the academic field.
Yeah. Well, and just on a note of hope, you know, the last thing I think that I wrote in that list is that right on the solstice, basically, we've got Saturn and Jupiter conjunct in Aquarius. So we've had a lot of Capricorn, Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn for the last 3 years, Pluto and Capricorn since 2009. And Capricorn's like, nothing wrong with the sign of Capricorn, all you Capricorns out there, but it's the sign of structure and world systems and things like that. And at the end of this year, Jupiter and Saturn are conjunct in Aquarius, the next sign. And Aquarius is like, you know, it's the vision of utopia. It's the vision of we can make the world, we can make society fair for everybody. And if we just set it up according to universal principles, then everybody can have enough. Everybody can kind of do what they want without hurting other people. So that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happens every 20 years, and it's called the Great Conjunction. And it is like reliable indicator of what the next 20 years are going to be like. It kind of establishes the values of that 20-year cycle. So that's a big deal, you know, and it doesn't mean there's not going to be, that we're not going to have more tests this year or in the next 3 to 5 years, but there's this dawn of kind of hope that's coming in that I feel like I still, after all these years, don't know how or why astrology works like this, but you know, certain things click in, and then it's like all these people that were not even close to getting it start getting it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think there's hope there.
I think there is too. I mean, I've seen just huge changes, just let's look at the last 20 years, right? Even when I started doing angel work and intuitive work, that was like 10 years ago. So many less people were talking about it. And I just feel like there's so much hope. You know, a lot of us want to be impatient and see the changes now, but our job is to envision the changes and also become an activist in the things that you really want to happen, as opposed to someone who's just talking about them, right? And I feel like that's an important piece here. when it comes to the opportunity for a revolution, all of us have to do our part, not just imagining and hoping and praying, but also what specific piece are you doing to make that change? And I feel like now more than ever, I'm going to start stressing that, like, let's talk about it, but what are you doing about it?
We've got to embody it, right?
Yeah, like be
That's
it.
bring the spirit energy into the earth realm. Is
Yeah.
by having it in our bodies, being in our bodies.
Being in your bodies in the first place.
Yeah.
Which I received, intuitive guidance. Was it yesterday? That a large part of the slowdown is to help humans come back into their body, just to feel their emotions. So there's a lot of people, crying a lot and soggy, and some people don't even know why they're crying, right? And it's just like, well, you're welcome back to your body. Let your body do its grieving. Thank you very much. Let it cry its ass off if it needs to. But our body as a separate being, that if you're not plugged into it, it has a mind of its own, And I think you're right. We need to be more embodied for this next phase and really feel what your next step is going to be. And, without like less strategy and more being in the moment kind of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. This is one of my readers commented the other day. Wow, this has really separated the spiritual people, the spiritual people on Instagram, or just spiritual teachers or entrepreneurs or whatever. The ones who like actually are walking their talk from the ones who are just kind of spouting stuff out there. Because it's like kind of crazy the level of fear that some of these people have been like vomiting out.
So you're talking about spiritual leaders or business? Okay. I mean, I'm trying to like kind of in a sense avoid like media. I'm just like sitting with spirit, but I do watch. I haven't seen much from other people. So what's going on? What's going on out there?
Well, there's like people that are like supposedly spiritual teachers that are like, don't, all you people from this place, don't come to our place in the country because we're, it's just like this total fear of like, you're going to kill us. You're going to infect, man, what great master taught that? I was like,
I mean, well, that's good. Because even just being a quote unquote spiritual teacher, which some people have accused me of being a spiritual quote unquote teacher.
I would never accuse you of that.
You think you don't accuse me of that. I hope, and I've seen it in my communities, people are coming more deeply into their connection with spirit. I think we're all being called to make an actual authentic connection. And that means not just diverting your power to whoever's the most attractive talking head where you like what they're saying. I mean, it's great to get inspired by people, but keep it at inspiration. And then, do your own work, get there on your own. Because until we have our intuitive instincts dialed in, we're all going to be kind of being real messy.
Yeah.
Just going to keep on being messy.
Yeah. There's more fun ways to be messy.
I know. Well, DK, I want to thank you for coming and talking again. It's just your predictions were so crazy. I wanted everyone to kind of hear from you on that. Is there anything that any golden truth that you would like to leave our audience with?
Oh boy. Well, once we stop being afraid of death, everything's going to be just fine. I think maybe that's what I was kind of like hinting at earlier or fumbling for is like, you and I know, right, from our medicine work, from the near-death experiences that we've had, that death is just a transition. It's just like moving to another state. And it's really easy to buy into the idea that death is tragic, but it's not. It can be. Mm-hmm. It can be if they're, but the kind of death that happens from, people dying from an illness or whatever, I mean, it can be really sad, but it's not a tragedy. People are just moving on probably to a much better, they're probably feeling better almost instantly, most of them. So I feel like this is one of the things that this is like really giving us an opportunity to embody and experience in our body is like, wow, if I really, let go of these programmed ideas that death is horrible and death is bad. But I recognize that my death could come at any time, I mean, it could come, crossing the street or whatever. Then that really focuses us in the present moment. And that's the point of power,
Yeah. So interesting that you say that. I feel like that is definitely the message that's been coming through as well. So thank you for validating that. It's like, we're all making peace with our mortality and in a variety of different ways, but yeah, no more running from our shadows, people. It's here.
Yeah.
And wow, what are we going to do about it?
We're going to have a great time.
We're going to party. I'm going to party.
Man, right?
I'm here to party. Yeah. So DK, if people want to book a session with you or check out what you're doing, where can they go?
If they want to book a session with me, they can go to dkbrainard.com, my last name. And first, dkbrainard.com. And if they want to get involved in the really cool thing that I'm into, cosmicfire.org, which my beloved and I have started a revolutionary movement of beauty and authentic connection and community. And it's really fun. We've got all kinds of just awesome calls and resources and meditations and art, deliciousness. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. So definitely check that out and check out DK, to check out his website. That's dkbrainard.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I did it. Well, DK, my man, it's always so fun chatting with you. We'll have to have you back to talk about some other juicy stuff.
I know, we were kind of serious today.
That's true. Why is that?
I don't know. I think it's just everybody's so kind of in it right now. Maybe, we had
I know. It is a little solemn. It's a little solemn this right now. Okay, so we're gonna yuck it up in our next one for sure.
There we go. I'll have to have you back on our new podcast, and then we can totally yuck it up.
Oh my gosh, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love you, Corinne.
I love you too.
Okay.
Take care. And bye-bye, everybody.